All right, so question for you guys. Do you know what day of the week it is today, right now? I'll give you a hint. It's not Sunday. It's not Monday. It's What's going on, everyone? Brian Schmidt here from Guardians of the Geckos, and it is once again Gecko Tip Tuesday, where in this video series I give you all some tips and advice on general care for your geckos. And now that brings me to this girl right here. This is Midnight. She's one of our female breeders, and I gotta show her off to you all real quick. Look at her beautiful dark charcoal base right there. We've had her for a while now, and she's produced some killer babies for us in the past. And you may also notice one other thing about her is she doesn't have a tail. And many of you may already know this, but just to share it real quick with you all, crested geckos, unlike most other lizard and gecko species, is once these guys drop their tail, if they feel threatened at all, they don't grow it back. They just grow a little like stub at the end, and actually many people refer to them at this point as frog butts because they literally look like little frogs walking around without their tail. And so that brings us to the point of this video. Is one of the common questions that we get asked a lot is there a way to help prevent a crested gecko from dropping its tail? Now, first we need to understand why a crested gecko will drop its tail in the first place. Now, the main reason is if a crested gecko feels like it's being threatened, if it's being attacked by a predator or something, what the crested gecko is going to do is it's going to want to get away, but to buy it some time is it's going to literally drop its tail. What's going to happen is the tail is going to be wiggling all over the place to hopefully distract that predator to attack the tail that's wiggling around, giving the crested gecko a chance to run and get away. Now, that's one of the main reasons, and a lot of things can freak the gecko out to cause that reaction to happen. Another reason is if the gecko's tail gets pinched for whatever reason, you may accidentally pinch it. Hopefully not, but you may accidentally pinch it when you're closing like maybe the terrarium door of the enclosure the gecko's in, and maybe you don't notice the tail sticking out. Obviously that's gonna hurt the gecko, and the gecko may drop its tail either from being freaked out or just the injury itself. Also, another reason is in breeding. Obviously, reptile breeding can be very aggressive. And, you know, whether it's the male being aggressive and the female bites at the male, saying, hey, I don't want any of that, and the male loses its tail, or vice versa, just the female drops its tail from being freaked out that this male is trying to get on her, that could be another reason. And actually, the reason I thought of doing this video is we just had a situation this last weekend at a reptile show we were vending at. Now, I was going through and cleaning up some of the deli cups with the geckos in there, and I opened up this one gecko's container, and immediately he went into level 10 freakout mode. I don't know if it was the noise from the deli cup or the sudden movement of me opening it up. He jumps out, not only jumps out of the deli cup, but completely jumps off the table onto the floor and starts full speed running with his tail waving in the air. And, you know, in this situation, I got to pick him up as soon as possible because there's people around and everything. So I jump over there, scoop him up, and as I'm picking him up, I'm looking down, and this guy is already completely detaching his tail from the rest of his body. And I didn't touch the tail at all. I knew like to pick him up towards the front. And there's no way I was able to avoid it in this situation, and he completely detached his tail. So in this situation, what I would recommend for you, if this were to happen to you, say your gecko's freaking out at level 10, you open the enclosure, he jumps out, he's running. The best way, if you are able to, just give the gecko his space. We all know crested geckos, they run fast when they're freaking out, but really we know they're gonna stop at some point. So my recommendation is if you can keep your eye on the crested gecko, he's not going too far, just give him like 5 to 10 minutes to hopefully calm down to where he's not waving his tail in the air. Because when you see that tail waving, that's a sign that, hey, you know, I want you to attack my tail so then I can drop it and get away from you. So anyways, at least that's what I would do in that situation, where in my situation I didn't have that option to just let him calm down for a second just because there was other people around, and I'd rather the gecko lose his tail than for someone to step on him, because then that's not nearly as good. And actually in New Caledonia, you know, where these guys are from, it's nearly impossible, it probably is impossible, to find a crested gecko with its tail. So what I mean by that is, it's okay if your crested gecko does lose its tail. Just take care of him. You know, make sure maybe you clean up the back of his tail if it's bleeding at all. Make sure there's no dirt or anything on it, because you don't want it to get infected. And set him aside for a little bit, let him recover, and your gecko will be just fine. It's completely normal reaction for your gecko to lose its tail. So now, in my opinion, the #1 reason most crested geckos lose their tail is when you house multiple ones together, and specifically when they're at a younger age. So as crested geckos are growing up, they hit a certain stage where, especially if you start feeding small crickets, where they're gonna try to nip and bite at anything that moves. And that's even if they're in the same enclosure as one of their siblings. Say a crested gecko jumps or its tail moves or something, the other gecko may see that movement and think, hey, is that a cricket? Let me jump and bite it real quick. And of course it's not a cricket, so what happens is the other gecko freaks out, it's gonna drop its tail, and that's basically what happens. So at Guardians of the Geckos with us, is once a crested gecko hatches out of its egg, we immediately put that crested gecko in its very own sterilite bin, and it makes it easy for us to track their hatch dates as well as who their parents are. And we can keep that crested gecko housed individually all the way up from when he hatches to when we sell that gecko to someone else. So like I said, it makes it easy to track everything, but also because that gecko is housed individually, there's no sibling gecko or other crested gecko that can nip at that tail, making the gecko freak out and drop its tail. So when you come to a reptile show and see us there with all of our crested geckos, I challenge you to check them all out next time, and you'll see the majority, at least 80% or more, 90% at our table are gonna have their tails. It's very rare for us to lose a crested gecko tail. Obviously, like I said, it does occasionally happen, like the situation I already talked about. We've had a few of those incidents happen, and I've also had a couple of crested geckos lose their tail from it getting pinched. We have, you've probably seen a rack system before. We have the slide out sterilite bins. Very rarely, but it does happen. A crested gecko may have its tail resting at the very top of that sterilite bin, and when you slide it out, there's a very small chance it could get stuck up there, making the tail get pinched and the gecko drops its tail. I think out of the hundreds and hundreds we've hatched out and bred and kept, I think that situation's only happened 2 times maybe, but that's it. So thanks for watching. Hopefully the information in this video helped you guys out a little bit in knowing what we do to help prevent tail loss. Midnight here, thanks you all for watching, of course, as well. And she has one more thing to tell you all. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and definitely check out our website, www.guardiansofthegeckos.com. And we will see you all next time. Bye.